My wife and I traveled through Portugal last month, and whenever we do a lot of driving, we'll find an audio book or something to listen. And so I typed into my search books with Portugal as themes, and a book popped up that I hadn't ever really heard of, but when I read the reviews, I said, this would be a good one for us to listen to. It's called Theo of Golden. Maybe you've read it. Okay. Published in 2023. It was written by Alan Levy. So for those of you who haven't, first of all, I recommend it, but let me give you I'm not going to give away the important parts, but just a little bit of background. Theo, we never learn his last name, was an 80-year-old widower and a Portuguese native, hence the book popped up. But that's it. That's the only Portuguese connection. Living in the U.S., he finds himself, that's a problem with Google searches, I should say. He finds himself in the town of Golden, Georgia. It's a fictitious town for the novel. He stops by, in the telling, he stops by a local coffee shop, and he's captivated by 92 pencil portraits of townspeople. And he spends hours looking at each one, staring at them, appreciating their beauty, looking in the eyes of the subjects. And he learns that the portraits aren't selling, and he's astounded. How's it possible? He thinks that there's such depth and beauty, and that as he looks, he thinks he can actually see into the soul of the subjects. So he decides that he'll purchase them one by one and gift them to the subjects of each of the portraits. So he finds their identities over the course of the novel, and he finds their contact information. And one by one, he writes a sweet explanatory letter were described by his beautiful script. And he invites each person to meet him at a bench in the town square by a fountain, promises each of them that he'll give them their portrait. Now, almost every encounter that he has is touchingly beautiful and deeply moving, because Theo reveals this incredible kindness and a capacity to listen so deeply to people and to get them to open up to him by not asking probing questions, but asking gentle, searching, open questions. And as he's listening, and as the story is being told, what becomes clear is that Theo truly looks into the person's soul and sees their humanity. And he gently invites them to tell their stories, and they do. And they're taken in by this kind, compassionate old man. And he hears their sorrows and their joys and their challenges. And the portraits become windows into their souls that Theo then is able to open as he sits and he listens to them. The author, Alan Levy, his prose is beautifully simple and, I think, engagingly descriptive. It kept us busy on our drive. We love listening to it. In some ways, it reads more like a fairy tale or a fable than an actual account of real life, but that's okay. But we can't miss the point of the story. Theo honors each of these human beings as a human being. He meets them where they are. He affirms their life stories. He affirms their worth as human beings. And that depth of his capacity to see into a person's soul becomes abundantly clear when he takes the portrait of the town's homeless woman and searches for her and prepares to give the portrait to her. Because he opens her up. She speaks to him, and she's obviously mentally ill. But yet he befriends her, and he patiently listens to her as she describes her rather strange perspectives of reality. Now, he's not perfect. When an angry and violent partner of one of the subjects of the portraits encounters Theo, and he accuses Theo of preying on his girlfriend, and he dashes the portrait of the girlfriend to the ground and stomps on it and says, "You'll not get near my girlfriend." Theo responds with his own angry outburst. He struggles, and then after he does, he kind of struggles to bring himself back down to a place of equilibrium. Now, it's not a Jewish book. Theo of Golden, though, is very much about a very essential Jewish concept. The concept is B'Tselem Elohim, the image of God. It's the awareness, those two words convey the notion and the awareness, the deep awareness that we can have that every person has within them a certain divine image. And Theo's kindness and his patience and his willing to honor each story with such grace, well, there's only one way to describe it. For us as Jews, it's B'Tselem Elohim. The author uses the phrase imitatio Dei, which means Latin. It comes out of the Christian community, imitating God. And that's what Theo does. He is godlike in his capacity to extend infinite patience and grace to these people. It touched me, this book. It really did, deeply. Because we are seeing the very opposite of the treating each other with B'Tselem Elohim today in our world. The very opposite of the kind of compassion and kindness that Theo shows. Dehumanizing other human beings in this world has become an epidemic. And all too often it is tragically condoned by our leaders, by our religious leaders, by our political leaders, by so many. So I want to be crystal clear about what I mean by dehumanization so you can get your head around it, because I think it's just so important for us to reflect on what's going on. We dehumanize immigrants when we incarcerate them cruelly and accept the separation of families. We dehumanize adherents of other religions when we declare that they all manifest a particular ideology. We dehumanize the homeless when we blame them for their poverty exclusively or fail to provide them with safe and secure shelters. We dehumanize people with whom we disagree when we presume that their beliefs are born of ignorance, naivete, or malicious intent, without taking the time to hear them out and understand their perspectives. We dehumanize political opponents. We see that going on all over the place. When we declare them traitors or enemies of the state. We dehumanize the poor when we fail to provide adequate health care or schooling. We dehumanize the incarcerated when we fail to provide them with basic human rights and allow violence and overcrowding and housing standards that we wouldn't allow in our zoos to exist in our prisons. And we even dehumanize our enemies when we accept or justify high casualties in war. And let's be clear. We're Jews. We know about being dehumanized because we have been and we are. Anti-Semitism is an ultimate dehumanization of the Jewish people. We thought it was behind us, but it's hitting us in the face. So of all people, we should not be among the dehumanizers. So I'm going to ask you this evening to reach inside of yourself to find your inner Theo. We have it, all of us. We just have to strengthen it. Think for a minute of the last time you slipped into that dark and deep hole of dehumanizing another. Now, don't think that I'm accusing you and not pointing the finger at myself as well. It's easy, we all do it. And if you think you don't, think again, please. Think about the language you use. Think about the actions you condone or even support. Think about your willful ignorance of the plight of others. What would it take if all of us were able to see others in the spirit of B'Tselem Elohim, in God's image? What would it take to recognize that others have human stories to tell, that others have loved ones, that others suffer sorrows and joys, that others have experiences just like us, and also that if we believe that we are capable of change, so too can others. You may have heard the name Vivian Silver in the context of the attack, the murderous attack on the Israelis from Gaza on October 7th. Vivian Silver was an Israeli peace activist, and she lived on the Gaza border. She moved there so she would have frequent contact with the Palestinians who live in Gaza. And she went back and forth, and she welcomed Palestinians into her home. She was a believer and a practitioner of B'Tselem Elohim. Even, she said publicly, with those who many see as Israel's most intractable enemies. Vivian Silver was killed by Hamas on October 7th. A cynic might say, see, that's what you get from those people. But her son, Yonatan Zeigen, believes and acts otherwise. After the death of his mother, he didn't seek revenge. He didn't seek war. Instead, he dedicated his life even more powerfully to her legacy. He's become a leader in the Parents Circle Families Forum in Israel, where Palestinian and Israeli victims of violence sit and share their stories and avoid judgment. And they share their stories and they embrace one another. And they share their stories and they affirm that hate can stop with them. There is pain, there is sorrow, and there are even moments of anger. But just as Theo restored his equilibrium after he exploded in anger, when people gather in this forum, they do the same. And what mostly comes through, astoundingly, is love and support. It is a manifestation of B'Tselem Elohim like I have never seen. Alan Levy concludes his book. He describes a plaque placed on the bench where Theo met those to whom he was gifting his portraits. The plaque declares that because of Theo, the bench is the place where heaven and earth met. In his epilogue, he asserts that all who choose to be can be capable of saintliness. And though he doesn't use these words, I'm not sure if he's Jewish or not, I couldn't figure it out, he does express that all of us are capable of ahavat olam, the prayer, the song, of great, beautiful love, eternal love. And then Alan Levy invites us to find a bench or someplace to sit down with another person and to share our story and to listen to theirs. He invites us to open our hearts to the divine that's within us and to share and listen to the divine that's within them, even when it might be hard to see or hard to give. But when we do, he says, when we reach across the divides, we create avenues for humane and caring communities in which bestowal, just like Theo bestowed the portraits on those recipients, the gifts of bestowal, the giving of our gifts to each other, can truly become our way of life.